you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hello. Welcome. It is March 9th, 2023. I am Renee Steelman, your host of She Became Visible. And I am so pleased today. I have as my guest, Jacki Riedeman, and I've invited Lila Tuller to co-host with me today because Lila and I both met Jacki at a Thrive meeting in St. George, Utah, a month or so ago. And since Lila was there and we both were able to listen to Jacki, I'll have her talk about that a little bit. It was just a really amazing weekend. And so I wanted Lila to join us today. So let me bring Lila and Jacki on, and we're going to talk about our Thrive experience, how we met. And then we're highlighting today Jacki Riedeman's story of how she became visible. And my sound and my mouth are off. And I don't know. It's because I'm sitting in a Town Suite Marriott hotel in Houston, Utah. Oh, well, Houston, Texas, that the internet is weird. So it's going to be a weird streaming thing. So Lila and Jacki, there you are.
Hello.
Morning. So hopefully your mouth and your words and your mouth will be moving at the same time. Otherwise, I'll just pretend like I'm in a Japanese dubbed movie and we'll just go from there. Yeah, there you go. Ah! So
it's working for me. It's
right. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, so it might just be the recording. So whatever. So Jacki, Lila, and I, and we all attended the St. George Thrive event that was held. Gosh, I swear I'm traveling way too much. I can't keep track of where I'm at or who I'm with anymore. But was it just a couple of weeks ago, or how long ago was it?
Almost a month, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I want to say almost a month.
Yeah, February, the last weekend in February, right?
Yeah, that's what it was.
25th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just realized you can see like I forgot to shut the door. Okay, I'm shutting.
Yeah, that's okay because it's a craft closet and it just shows how fabulously crafty you are.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, it's a mess. Anyway, okay.
So the weekend at Thrive, we had some fabulous speakers. And at the very end, one of the last speakers was John DeLynn, and he opened it up for question and answer. And Jacki very patiently waited in line. And then Jacki, tell a little bit about what you asked John.
Well, I don't think I actually asked him a question. He had said that they needed more diversity and voices in their podcasting world, that there was a need for more women, more people of color. Yeah, more women. Yay. More people of color, more people of the LGBTQ community, more people that spoke Spanish. I think he said even maybe more older people. I'm not even really sure. So I waited in line and I said that I fit most of that demographic, that I belong to the LGBT community, that I'm a woman, obviously. That's how I identify, and that I speak Spanish. And it's not my primary language, but I do speak Spanish, and that I am of that older demographic. And also that I would offer him my story as well to be told, and I would be more than willing to, start this podcasting journey. And that was kind of how I introduced myself to John and to the community, the people that were there. And yeah, and then I'd been married to my wife, and I told a little bit of my personal story.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And what I loved the most was all of those three things. Number one, you know, when I go to these Thrive events, the Thrive events that I've been to, there is a demographic that I would say is probably, what would you guys say, 30 to 50, I think might be the majority. There are people in my demographic, which I'm 10 years older than you are, Jackie. There are people that in my age group, but most of the ones that we've met are couples that have left the church together.
Yep.
And so to find mixed faith marriages in my age category, there are a few, but I don't see a lot. And I don't hear a lot of female voices in my demographic. I hear a lot of men who have true believing wives, but they themselves have left the church and they're my age. So I loved what you said as far as every qualification that you said, that Spanish speaking, huge demographic in that area. And then older people who have, we talk about history when we talk about the older temple ceremony to some of the 30 and 40-year-olds, that might as well be 1830 for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They have no reference to that.
Yeah,
right.
they don't.
No idea.
No, no loud laughing and the blood atonement, and they just don't understand. Yeah.
All the penalties.
Yeah.
Can't, they almost look at you like,
Yeah,
no.
The 5 points of fellowship. They're like, what are you talking about?
Too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think because of that separation, they don't understand that it wasn't that long ago, and that it's not, because there is that mindset in all of the different categories. Well, that was a long time ago and we've gotten better, or that was a long time ago, things have changed. We can't be presentism. We can't go back and judge people for what happened in 1830. And it's like, but could we go back to 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I loved, and that was one of the things I loved about your story, was it seems like everything that is maybe on people's list of why they're struggling with their belief in the church, you have lived.
Yes.
But I found it fascinating when you gave me your timeline, because I'm like, but she's still there. And then I go down, but she's still there. So
I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
So start at, I want, rather than read your biography, I want to live it, kind of on the timeline that you presented. So you talked about how that your father was a convert, but that you didn't have that typical Mormon, you were that family in the ward, right? Would you say that? Tell that story.
Yeah. So we weren't at that time what the word was active, right? We were the less active family in the ward. And my parents were not married in the temple. They were not, because my father had converted when I was 3 or 4. I'm the oldest of 3. And so we didn't go to church every Sunday. In fact, we were gone many Sundays. My dad was the only, my dad worked. My mother was a stay-at-home mother during the 70s, which was very nice. And so we didn't go to church every Sunday. And therefore we weren't the active, very busy in the family. My mother wasn't in the Relief Society. She wasn't in the primary. She didn't have the callings. So we were the family that was, but we weren't, we were that less active. Or maybe in the 70s, we were still called Jack Mormons, that kind of a family, if you remember that term, right? Yeah. So, and I lived in the west side of Salt Lake City. So as you can imagine, at that time, it was very, very LDS. And so, you were judged on how active your family was, even within the elementary school that I went to. So the PTA was ran by the Mormon moms. If you were in the Relief Society and the primary presidency and the Sunday school presidency and all that stuff, you were in the PTA. And since my mom wasn't in all of that, she wasn't in the PTA. And it became very evident in elementary school that if your mother wasn't part of that, you didn't get the jobs like, oh, I don't know, crossing guard, or, remember the kids that were in the hall monitors and all of that. So it was very much, I learned those lessons pretty young, that the church ruled things outside of just the chapel, right?
Oh.
And yeah, so the ward was very much the ward that ruled how things ran in other places, as well as just the ward. And
isn't that interesting? I think that's fascinating that even outside of Utah, in our high school, which there was a pretty good size LDS community in our high school, but the head coach, I remember the head coach of my kids' football team was very active in a Baptist church, and it drove him crazy that so many of these really great athletes that were in pretty prominent positions in different, athletic events were LDS. Drove him crazy. And, he tried to get people to come over and watch the Godmakers movie and stuff like that. And he's a great man. He's a very kind man, but I know it was a source of contention that, like you said, on a lot of authoritative positions, the PTA and things like that, there's still a strong LDS, because I just think that's how we were wired. Right? I mean, it's like training from 3 on.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how quickly kids pick up on that. It's like, oh, your mom's in the PTA, or your mom's active, in the track. So I might not be picked to run that field event because her son's going to run that field event because she's active in the track. That's not just LDS. That's very, very, but it's amazing how quickly kids pick that up.
Yeah. I remember having a big argument with my mom in 4th grade. We were doing the Nutcracker as a school, right? And I didn't try out for a part. And I was a dancer. I danced growing up. And I was a dancer. My mom was like, why didn't you try out? And I'm like, Mom, what's the point? I'm not going to get a role, right? I mean, I'm not going to get picked for anything because I'm not going to get picked. I'm not going to get chosen. So mad at me. She was so mad at me that I didn't try out for anything. Well, they didn't have enough people. So I ended up being a sugar plum fairy for this thing. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. But I mean, the point was, it was like, what's the point of trying out? I mean, I knew I wasn't going to get a role. It was like ridiculous to even try. Yeah.
And I'm so unfamiliar with the Utah when people say, oh, I'm in Cache Valley, or I was, I don't know why. Why is it that you people in Utah refer to your counties? Well, this is such a county. I was like,
I don't know, because I grew up in the west side of Salt Lake City, so I don't know about those other people.
Okay. Interesting. Did you find that, Lila, when you were growing up, was there also a strong emphasis of leadership in the schools and other things that reflected the ward leadership?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question that was the case. It was like the active, like the opposite of what Jacki's family was. They're really I don't know how to put it, the elite, I guess you could say. They ran everything. It's not in Salt Lake City. It's like the church runs everything. Everything. It's the shopping malls, it's the restaurants, it's the schools, it's everything. And yes, if you're not in that, that group, or considered to be a part of that group, then you are over in the, on the wrong side of the tracks, basically. And I get it. I get what you're saying. You knew you weren't going to get a part, which is it's tragic, because it's really, it's like a bubble there. It's not like that everywhere. There is, and I guess there are some areas where there's a Catholic influence or a Jewish influence that sort of does the same thing in their, respective area. But yeah, Utah, and especially the Salt Lake area, I think it's probably all of Utah. Right. It's very much run by the church. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because we have a lay ministry, there isn't that power that you get. You might have a strong in the subgroups, like you say, PTA or whatever, with people that are just society dynastic. But because we have this lay ministry, this position of Relief Society president, some outside it would be, well, a junior league, so it's already a society outside of a religion, but there's still a power dynamic, but it's still a secular society position. And I'm sure that's just humanity, but it's more so in the church. Yeah.
It was, and it wasn't any better in 1990 when my wife was looking for a job. She'd graduated from BYU in teaching and education, and she was looking for a job teaching in Utah, in Salt Lake area, because that's where I was teaching. But anyway, and she would go in for interviews, and the people she was interviewing with would say, well, I know the daughter of my bishop or the daughter of my stake president. And she knew right then she wasn't getting the job. She was just being interviewed because they had to interview X amount of people.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
That was in 1990. Yeah.
So who knows who was still very popular, only it's a different who in when you live in Utah. Oh, I'm so glad I never had to live in the bubble. Well, talk a little bit about, I like when you said that your teenage years were a little bit tumultuous, especially when they had the release time seminary. I thought, oh, I want to hear that story, because I grew up with only, I grew up in the Midwest, and so it was never part of the school system.
Right.
So I don't even know what that was like, having an elective.
Oh, my God.
Tell me what that story's about.
So as time went on, I got a little bit rebellious. I must admit, I graduated from primary. I did that. I would go, I could walk to church. So if my mom wasn't going or whatever, sometimes I'd take my sisters, I'd walk to church. I managed to graduate from primary, memorize all this stuff, do all this, pass all the things and glue them onto my little banner and all that kind of stuff, and embroider it, and, graduate from primary. So moved on into young women's, but then they split our ward, and they split it in a fact that they put us with the new people, which was, I was the eldest person in the ward, and everybody that I had grown up with and gone to church with and I was in school with was in the older ward. And they said, nope, you can't attend that ward. Yeah. You cannot put your records in that ward. You cannot go to that ward. And there was no one my age in my ward. And that's when I said, ugh, this is horrible, right? And I just kind of got really rebellious. And once I got kicked out of a dance because I wore, my sleeves didn't have, the right length sleeves, and it was a big thing. And I started to say things in young women's, like, they'd say, well, you need to date people who are, you need to prepare to get married in the temple. And I'd say, well, what if I don't marry someone who's Mormon? Like, my dad wasn't Mormon. They didn't like me very much. So, and the other
thing,
yeah, I did that a lot. And the other thing was, I was super involved with Girl Scouts of Utah. And at this point, once you get past 6th grade in Utah, and I don't know how it is outside of Utah, but girls drop out of Girl Scouting because they get young women's, and you don't need Girl Scouting, right? But I kept Girl Scouting. That was my thing. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm still in touch with all my Girl Scouting friends. My best friend in the world. She's, we're still best friends, and we're having a reunion this summer. A bunch of us have been friends for 40 years now. And so we're very, very tight group. And I kept those friends. But this bishop at the time, he would later go on to be my stake president when I was on my mission. He had 6 daughters and a son. And he said, Girl Scouting builds leaders, and women aren't supposed to be leaders. He would never be in Girl Scouting. Yeah. Wow. And every summer I would go to camp, this beautiful camp above Park City, Utah. And he would try to bribe me. You stay home this summer and I'll give you your young women's medallion, or I'll give you this award. And I'm like, yeah, not worth it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the bishop. So it was, and I was like, yeah, no, this is not right. Right. And my parents raised us to be fairly independent. My dad had no sons. So, we were raised to be independent thinkers. And so I was totally found my niche in Girl Scouting. Plus, I was super busy. I was a straight A student. I played in the orchestra. I played in the honors symphony for the district. I danced. I taught dance. I did a gazillion things. And they were always calling and saying, you need to come and can peaches with the young women. And my mom was like, no, she doesn't.
Yeah.
I taught her how to can peaches already. So, you know, no, that doesn't matter. So it was really high pressure situation.
Yeah. But I love, and I see this a lot in successful people where you're aware of what's going on, but you find your niche and you found yourself. You're like, I got it. I see how the system works. Whatever. I'm going to find, you know, and so you've got orchestra, you've got dance, you've got all these other things that you found your tribe kind of in. So did you feel like you had a good social group then?
Okay. I had a massive, excellent social group. So we get to 9th grade and now we're going to go to seminary. And I'm like, this is BS. I'm not going to swear. You guys are going to get a period off, and I'm going to take an academic class, and you're going to get this release time to walk off the property to go take a religious class. And I'm going to sit my butt in a class of math or English or foreign language, because I started taking Spanish in 7th grade. And you guys are going to go learn about whatever you're going to learn about. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to play this game. Yeah. So I didn't take seminary, and I thought it was a cop-out. I really did. It gave my friends who were quite academically inclined and had always been with me in junior high and high school in high academic classes, AP classes and honors and everything. All of a sudden they're like off campus going to seminary. And I'm like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they get a time to go across the street to take seminary.
Right.
So I didn't do that.
Right.
But then came senior year and I had a free period. Oh, amazing. I had all these credits and I had a free period. And I went, I'll take seminary. But I was like, but I'm an overachiever. And I don't want to have the little asterisk by my name that says 1 year completed out of 4, right? Because I'm an overachiever. So I did 3 years of home study plus the year of seminary. And I graduated from seminary.
Oh my goodness.
Way. Oh my gosh.
You are an overachiever.
I'm an overachiever.
Good for you. Yeah. I did not graduate from seminary.
I don't even know if I did. I can't even remember.
My senior year, I was in California and you had to get up at 5:30 in the morning. And I had already graduated early from high school because I was ahead. Yeah. And no way was I going to get up at 5:30 in the morning to get my butt to seminary at 6 and then go home. So I'm like, forget it. My parents were like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Luckily. But yeah. That's amazing that you pulled that off. Really.
Yeah. They didn't really want me to, but I'm stubborn. So
yeah. Well, and you mentioned that it was your fault that your parents really stayed active in the church and even ended up going to the temple. So, how did that happen?
The year after I graduated college, high school, 1982, I was working at Girl Scout camp. And it was a really rough year in Utah. I don't know. It was one of these years like this year. And it snowed on the 4th of July. And we happened to have a staff that was not, they weren't integrated. We had a lot of BYU hirees instead of traditional Girl Scout hirees. A lot of people quit in the middle of the summer. And those of us that stayed became very, very tight. And my mother heard rumor through the grapevine that it was just this nest of lesbian people up there working at Cloud Rim. Oh, that's the name of the camp. Sorry. And she was super paranoid because she'd already kind of suspected that I might be gay. And she just freaked out. After the summer, she freaked out. She thought that I was gay. And so she said, and I was going to be living with them and going to the University of Utah. And that was our arrangement because that was what my parents could afford. And so, my mom said, okay, after the summer, she's like, okay, we're going to, no more Girl Scouts for you. You can't be involved in Girl Scouts. You have to be home. We're all going to church. This is how it's going to be. And so that started, I was the reason why my family went back to church, literally. That
So it
was
was her fear of you being gay that were like, we need to knuckle down and get this family in order. And so that is interesting. And was it just because you weren't dating and you didn't bring home a boyfriend, or what was her?
I had dated. I had this boyfriend, and I had a friend in high school, this boyfriend. Currently, when that happened, he was on his mission. But I had dated a couple guys. I mean, I had friends, but she'd always been so happy that I wasn't boy crazy, she'd always been, oh, Jackie's not boy crazy. Isn't that great? And I'm like, well, I didn't know. I didn't have any words for it,
Yeah,
Like, no, it doesn't bother me. But, to her friends. And then all of a sudden it was like, it was a bad thing. And so yeah. So that's
See, you know what? Okay, so the 80s, that's the AIDS scare. So that's when all of the AIDS stuff, and there was so much in the news about homosexuality, and that it probably was being really pushed to the forefront and making people start to go, wait, my son used a moisturizer. What,
Right.
what could that be? That what, trying to think what would have brought on her, her like, what's happening here type thing.
Well,
So
there was another fear my mother had. I don't really like to tell my mom's story. My mom is 80,
yeah.
but she had an aunt who my mom was 15, so it would have been 1957, who was with her partner. And my great grandmother lived with my great aunt and my great aunt's partner. And the partner, she got drunk one night and she took a shotgun and she shot my great grandmother, and she shot my great aunt, and she shot herself, and she killed all three of them. So I think that horrific gun trauma experience was also in back of my mom's mind, that this is a horrible thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I could see that. That makes a lot of sense, where it was a causation thing where in actuality it wasn't, but I could see where back in the 50s and the 60s, you would try to put things together. That makes sense. So you are kind of doing your thing, and you are determined that whatever, people, this is where I'm headed. And you went off to University of Utah. You chose that school because of the curriculum, and it had the school. What made you go there?
I wanted to go to Utah State. Okay. But I was at the time I was going into metallurgical engineering. And in the 1980s, that was going to be like a big thing for women. And I would have had to eventually have transferred back to the University of Utah anyway, since my parents had told me that they couldn't afford to send me to Colorado, to the College of Mines, which had wanted me, but we didn't have enough money to send me there. So the cheapest thing to do was to keep me at home and send me to a commuter school. So I did that. And then I registered there, and then I joined that fall as I entered as a freshman, sophomore, junior status. I joined Lambda Delta Sigma, the LDS the LDS sorority at the University of Utah, which no longer exists.
Okay. Talk about that, because that, you mentioned that was very instrumental in your life. And it's sad that they've done away with some of these groups that really, I don't know, they were good training grounds in some instances. I can see where they're not, but talk about that, how that influenced you.
Well, it was very clear that my parents were not going to let me join Greek life. This was not going to happen. It was expensive. It was all about the drinking. And then you had to live on campus in the Greek house, right? Okay. So Greek was not going to happen. So my mom, I don't know how my mom found out. She has her ways. She said, what about this Lambda Delta Sigma thing? So I went to Rush reluctantly. I'm like, okay, I'll go to Rush, whatever, Mom. And I was super depressed because we were having these arguments like on a daily basis about Girl Scouts and all of this stuff. And super depressed. And so I go to Rush, which was a week long of activities. And at the time there were, I think, 9 different chapters of Lambda Delta Sigma, which met at the Institute at the University of Utah. And it was Rush, like a Greek Rush. So you would go every night, would be different activities. Right. And I was really drawn to this one chapter called Kappa Nu. And I went in, and then all of a sudden, this one person caught my eye, and I realized that she was a member of Kappa Nu. She had been my counselor at camp one year when I was younger. So I formed this connection with her. Now, the group that I ended up joining was strong women. And I'm still in contact with a lot of these women. Several of them didn't get married over the years and had children on their own, but they don't identify as anything other than LDS.
Wow.
It's just amazingly interesting to me. I did one of my Kappa Nu sisters. I did run into later on in life down here in Southern California, and she is gay, and she did have a son. And so, I mean, it's just really interesting, but it had a different vibe than all the other chapters, and I was very comfortable there.
So you could really tell from this chapter that these were strong women. Yeah. They had a kind of a what's the word? I can't think of it. Like a career. They had a career mind. Yes. It wasn't just, oh, if I could just meet my husband and get my home ec thing, I'd be great here. So you could sense that these were driven women in many different areas of life, not just home economics or whatever.
Correct. Yeah,
and then turned out to be true.
Yeah, it did turn out to be true. Where the other chapters weren't like that. They had a whole different vibe, different sense. And I knew I wasn't going to fit in with those people.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
So,
I love the fact that so often, and I feel like I see that now, where there are, we're not of the world, so, but we're going to copy the world, but we're going to make it our own, which is going to make it better. So we're not going to do Greek, sororities, fraternities. We're going to make our own, but they're exactly the same, except ours are better. You know what I mean? It's like you see the advantage to these groups, but they have to put their spin on it, which, hey,
kind of like the LDS. Sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead, Lila. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just thinking, the 12-step program that's been around forever.
Yeah.
AA. Well, then, of course, the church has to create their own version of the 12-step program. Right. And interact and bring in, gospel principles into it and make it better than the one that's been working for, 100 years. So
have a family member going through that right now. Yeah. The 12 church.
The church version of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see what you're saying too, Renee, because the young women's camp program is a rip off of the Girl Scouting program.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course it is. Truly.
Yeah. Including the bandolo and the merit badges. It's the same thing.
Totally. Yeah.
Only we love that idea. We're going to take it and make it our own. And it's better. And we're going to convince people that it's better, because how dare you get involved unless you're a Boy Scout, then please not only get involved in it, but give all your money to it. That was
don't even
not make sense.
Don't even. Yeah.
Don't even start with that, right?
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Well, and then in the Young Women's program, don't forget you have to infuse your testimony in order to pass the level. So you got to write in your journal and bear your testimony, and then
crochet. Yeah. So you graduated, and you graduated with I'm so impressed with you. You graduated in 1988 with a teaching credential in history and Spanish and a BA in history. Yeah. And so you thought, okay, where are your little sisters in all of this?
Oh, they're at home. So, I served my mission before I graduated. So I changed my major. So I was attending the University of Utah. I started in 1982.
Okay.
And I attended, and for 82 to about 83, 84, I was in engineering. And I went, whoa, no, don't like engineers, don't like engineering. I had scholarships. I said, I was accepted into the College of Engineering right out of high school. I said, ew, don't like this. Got rid of all the math and science, said bye-bye, and went to humanities.
Okay.
So totally changed my major, was way happy, got accepted into the College of Education, and then said, okay, I need to take a year and a half off because I'm leaving to go on a mission.
Okay.
So from 85 to 87, I served my mission.
Okay, so I love that then. Okay, so that's the timeline. So, and were you just thrilled when you got your mission call? You went to Argentina. That's amazing. And you've
Yeah.
been taking Spanish. So, is that Spanish speaking? I never can remember
Yes, it
the.
is. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. I
So,
was so afraid I was going to get sent to Japan or someplace or English speaking after all this Spanish in my life, right?
yeah, Portuguese. It's like, I
Yeah.
know, but no.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. I love the people that have taken 4 years of German and they get sent to Japan. It's kind of like, did you read? Did you actually read the? Yeah, I know it doesn't make sense. But you met your wife, your current wife, in the mission home. So tell us about that.
Oh my.
So you've taken some time. You're involved in the sorority. You're loving, and you're just kind of concentrating on your studies. You've got a great friend group. You're not looking for love.
No.
You are, but you have identified.
Yes,
as gay.
at this point, my parents had gone through the temple in 1983. Then, after we'd started this journey, where my mom said we must go back to church.
To save Jacki. Yeah.
To save.
Yeah. Yeah. In 1983, we had gone through the temple. They'd gone and been sealed, and I had to go wait in the nursery with my sisters while they were sealed. And then we were brought to them, which wasn't a bad experience, I have to admit, as a 19-year-old. It was good. At that point, the bishop had said, "Do you want to take out your endowments?" And I said, "No, I'm good. Thank you." So that was fine. And then I pretty much, I had identified that's who I am, but I was in the space that you didn't have to be that way. This is 1983 after all, right? 83, 84, 85. You could just get married. You could repent. You could serve. You could do all that. Just telling you, right? And then you would be fine and everything would be hunky dory and good. So, I thought if I just served hard enough, I would be better. Cured, maybe?
Okay.
So did you? I have a question about that. Did you, although you identified as, would you say lesbian? That was the word.
Probably, yeah.
Did you feel that was wrong? Like, what were your internal feelings about that?
Yes,
at the
definitely
time?
wrong. Definitely bad, wrong.
Did you feel like it was something that you could get over and like repent for, and it would go away at some point?
Yeah,
that was
that's the overriding theme, right? We're talking 1980s.
That's what you were taught. That's what we were taught.
Yeah.
So I just wondered how you internalized that and what that did to you as a person, feeling like somehow you're intrinsically bad.
You're bad, right? So I think that's part of what has driven me in my life, to be perfect, to be part of that is that my mother and my father have always told me you're the eldest and you have to be the example. Part of that is just my personality, that I'm like, gotta do it, right? But part of that was I had to do the best. I had to be the best. I had to work to get rid of this thing that was not societal, wasn't right? I mean, in society, it was wrong too. We're talking the early 80s. Nobody named it. Nobody talked about it. If you looked it up in a book, which we had to read, we didn't have the internet back then, it didn't have anything good to say, right? So, so all of those things led me to think that there's got to be a way that I can serve that will help me to get rid of any feelings that I might have, or I might have had, which I did have that I had in the past, that I might have in the future, and will help me to be normal, better. I don't know, whatever.
So I was going to, that's one of the things I was going to ask you. So you were attracted. There were people that you were like, I love that person. I would love to date that person. But you kind of talked yourself out of it, thinking, no, we're going to be friends because I'm going to get this, I'm going to become an engineer, and, and this is okay. I can work through this because look what you've already worked through, right? Look what you've already overcome. So this is something else you can overcome. And you had guy friends, like you said. So you're like, I could maybe fight my way through this.
This way. Yeah. Actually, that friend that I told you about in sorority that had been my Girl Scout leader, we would have these coded conversations. Yeah, these coded conversations together. She has since passed away. She's about 4 years older than I. And last year she passed away from Alzheimer's. It ran in her family. So, I mean, yeah, but she did move back east and got married to a man. So, but we would have, she and I had coded conversations all the time about this.
Was she also LDS?
Yes. Because she was in, sorority too. Yeah. So it's insanity. I mean, the thing
is it partly because in your youth, you don't understand mortality. You think you have all this time. And so you always think, well, I have time to find happiness. I'm not going to work on this right now because something's wrong with me, but look what I've been able to overcome. So I have time. And then you get to a certain age where you realize, I don't have any more time. Exactly. And, and the time has come where I want to find a partner. I want to find a life companion. Obviously, this isn't going to change. So, and I love how you told the story of how you met your wife when you were in the mission training center, but you did not like each other.
Well, we hated each other. There's no two ways around it.
And what was that all about? Yeah, what was that all about?
So we go into the missionary training center in September of '85. She's from Northern California and she goes to BYU.
That explains it right there. I mean,
right there, right? I mean, and I'm from Utah and I go to the U. So you've got Utah Mormon and U of U student and Northern California Mormon and BYU person. And we are companions. Now this, and then I was like mega rule follower because remember, I'm here because I want to be, but I'm also here serving a kind of penance, right? I'm going to do everything. I have the book. Yeah. I'm going to follow all the rules. I'm going to get up at whatever god awful hour in the morning and go do exercise, which I'm not a morning person. And I'm going to follow every single rule in the book and I'm going to do everything I can. And then, and she's more laid back, she's not quite this rule follower that I am. And we were both going to the same mission. We'd both been called to the same exact mission. And it didn't work. And she got called into the branch president and I didn't get called into the branch president. And there was just, it was a big mess. And we were in the advanced Spanish group. I don't know if you knew that existed because they try to get some people, if you speak Spanish going in, they try to get you your visa early so that you can get into the field faster.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. But Argentina, we got to love the LDS Church. Argentina had just come out of their Cold War and they were barely into their first democracy that they would live through without having to have a coup. And starting in 1985, I think it was when Raul Alfonsín was elected. And they didn't tell us any of that. And so we couldn't get our visas early. So we were stuck in MTC anyway. And they didn't tell our families that. They didn't tell us that.
Right.
How long were you stuck there?
Just the 8 weeks, the 2 months. It took just the normal amount of time to get the visas. But they were hoping to get us out of there quicker and get us down actually down there quicker. But they didn't.
So once you left the training center and you arrived in Argentina, did you guys stay companions or did they you split everybody up?
They split us up. And she went one way and I stayed in the city where the mission home was, which is where I would stay for the majority. I would be in that city, in that area for almost half my mission.
Wow.
And I know it was not cool, but she would go around to different areas. And then about, I don't know. It was July of '86, July of '86. I was in a different city, one that was south, closer to the Andes Mountains and closer to Chile. And I had another companion from Louisiana that had really struggled with me, who was also gay. And then she had gone to my wife, and she was very, very struggling. And my wife called me, which, you don't do on the phone. And she
Oh.
said, "What's up with so and so?" And I said, "She's going to have to tell you herself," because she had told me the whole story about how she was in
Oh.
love with their previous companion and they'd gone to the mission president, blah, 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 blah. I said, "I
Oh.
can't tell you that story. She's going to have to tell you, talk to her." So we started talking to, well, she's trying to get her to like come out of this funk. And then, so we started talking, and then we were in the same area, but not ever companions, like the next little while. Then I had my appendix out. Then we ended up in the same area. And, we wanted to end as companions. Good thing we didn't. They didn't end us as companions, but and then we came home in March of 87.
Okay, so everybody, so you go home, bye, see you later, been
Yeah.
nice knowing you. And then you go back to the university, you graduate in 88.
Well,
How did you guys get back together?
Because I go back in March, middle of March of 87, and school starts the end of March for spring quarter. She comes back from California, Northern California, to start attending BYU for spring semester. And when you come back from a mission, you don't know anybody, right? I mean, you've been so out of the world, especially when you're in a foreign country, that you kind of gravitate toward people that have been on the mission. So there were quite a few of us that would hang out together. And then she and I just started hanging out together more and more and more and more and more. And here we are 35 years later.
So did she identify as lesbian when she was on her mission? No. When did she decide, I think I'm starting to learn more about myself? When did she do that?
Maybe. Well, okay. The better question is, when did she identify as a lesbian? Probably not until after we'd been together for a while.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's like, it's like, I not only like this lady, I think I really like this lady.
It's very likable.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
So now you guys worked together for a long time before it became legal. So were you just kind of did you feel and you're going to church? Both of you are going to church?
We didn't go to church much. We'd pop in and out if things were, you know, we might go with her parents, or we might go if something was going on, but we didn't really attend.
Okay.
No.
And are you living the life where everybody's just looking the other way, going, these are just two really good friends who are saving money by rooming together, and they're both teaching, and isn't that nice?
Pretty much. Until 1992. Until 1992, when I came home for Christmas, and I don't know what was my mother again. I don't know what was on my mother's plate, but we were out Christmas shopping, and we were stopped to get something to eat at Wendy's salad bar, and Madonna song was playing on the radio, on the music, and I said, "I really like this song," and she goes, "Didn't I teach you better morals? I bet there's a lot of other things that you really like." She goes on. She goes, "Are you gay?" And I go, "Mom, probably shouldn't have this conversation here in the Wendy's." And she goes, "Well, I want to know, are you gay?" And I go, "Mom, we should probably go outside." And so that's how that all came about. So then I said yes.
Oh my gosh.
So she was right. It was Madonna. It was all Madonna's fault.
It was on Madonna's
there
fault.
You go. It explains everything. But okay, I love this. So so you finally are like, yes, I am gay. We're in love. And she's like, I knew it.
Yeah.
And then, but it didn't break your family apart though, right? Mom and dad are still like,
they're still great. They went from like, you can never have Terry. That's my wife's name. You can never have Terry stay at the house, because we wouldn't have your sisters have their boyfriends stay overnight, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So like within a few months, we went on vacation together. We were good.
That's so great. That's unusual, but that's really great.
Unusual.
Yeah.
So you ended up moving to Southern California as a couple. Is that
in 1990.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you joined a group. You joined Affirmation Gay and Lesbian Mormons.
Yep.
Talk about that.
Oh my. So this is the 1990s, and Affirmation had been formed in the late 70s. And a really good friend of ours, his name was Paul Mortons, and he had recently passed away. He had actually been one of the early founders and had founded the Los Angeles chapter of Affirmation. And Affirmation was a social, we call what they have now Affirmation 2.0, because a little bit different, the affirmation that exists now, a little bit different than what the founding, because we know the founders, what the founders had envisioned for it. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just different. So it was a social and support group for gay and lesbian and LGBTQ, as we've gone on now, Mormons. Now, mind you that in that day and age, there was no deconstructing on your own, right? You didn't choose to leave on your own. You were forced out. Yeah. So these were mostly men that had been excommunicated. They had gone through the whole gamut of missions. We had bishops and stake presidents and we had people that had worked in the hierarchy of the church, in the church office buildings. And we had men that had kids and, they had all walks of life in the LDS church. Men that had electroshock therapy at BYU, had done all of that. Men that had AIDS and men that didn't. And so this was a lot of men, not a lot of women, because women were like, patriarchy, I'm away. Anything that reeks of Mormonism, I'm not joining. Yeah. So when Terry and I walked in and joined in 1992, it was like, ooh, women. But we really found a community there, and we found a lot of friends there. And so we have a lot of our very, very best friends come from that community. And it was a very good place to transition, to figure out how to be spiritual in a lot of ways without being in the church, which is what I think Thrive is trying to help people understand post-Mormonism, how to be spiritual without being in the church, right? Since these people weren't wanted in the church, and they've been excommunicated and kicked out of the church, and their families, a lot of them didn't want them anymore. A lot of them been disowned. You had to find a way to be outside the church. And, at that point, there was a lot of, some people were still grappling with, do I stay in the church or do I leave the church? Can I work within the church? And everybody was all, everybody had to find their own paths. And it was a lot of just support of supporting people through that transition of.
But where were you? Like, where were you sitting with the church at that point?
Because of how I had been as a teenager. And because I think I'd started deconstructing a lot of things when I was little. My grandmother passed away when I was 5. She wasn't LDS. She drank and smoked. I spent every day. I was at her house every day of my life. And at that point, it didn't make sense, 3 levels of heaven. So I had already deconstructed heaven when I was 5. So wow. I think I had already deconstructed a lot of things. So for me, that easing out of, I had been in and out in my life journey, in, out, as I had gone along. So I was pretty much, I was good at going in and out, in and out, in and out.
Mm-hmm. So, and talk about that then, because I think that is the most amazing thing to me, being somebody who probably is good in some ways, but not good in other ways, where I make decisions quickly, right? So I make decisions quickly. And so for me, it was like, when I found out A, B, and C, I'm like, I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. But I also had a husband and a house over, roof over my head, and kids that weren't necessarily, I mean, I had a lot of reasons where it was easier for me to do that. But you, in spite of even joining in 1992, you went on to also join another group called Maybe Baby, which helped gay and lesbian couples have children. Mm-hmm. So talk about that. So you're kind of, you're still Mormon.
Yeah, this group had nothing to do with Mormonism. Okay, it was just a group that was in LA that had.
But you and Terry decided, we want to have children. We want to have a family.
She was kind of along for the ride. Okay. See, when I was 15, I had told my friend, my dearest friend, if I'm not married by the time I'm 30, I'm having kids on my own no matter what.
Okay, so that was a big part of your life plan.
1992, we're hitting 30. And I'm like, okay, we're getting to that 30. And I told Terry that I want kids, and here we are. So how are we going to make this happen? So they had formed this group called Maybe Baby. And it was because at this time California was really moving in a direction of allowing same-sex couples to be able to adopt and do surgery and all these other things. And there had been a lot of in vitro and all that kind of stuff. So we joined this group, and it would meet, I think it was once a month. I can't remember. And we would talk about different ways of becoming parents. They would have guest speakers come in. They would have the judge that did the first second parent adoption in the country come in and talk to us about that. So it was all kinds of really, really good information. But it was really interesting sitting in that group because you would introduce yourself, and would say, we're Jacki and Terry, and we're from, we're from where we're from, and sometimes it would come up that we were LDS, that we were Mormon, and that people were just like, that would freak people out. How can you be Mormon? I mean, that was like a bigger thing in gay groups when we introduce ourselves as being Mormon than anything else. That would freak people out more than anything. How can you be Mormon? And it's more at this point, we're identifying more like as a cultural thing. I think in some ways more than like as a religious thing. Although I can say that some of the religion things, I still aren't bad.
Right.
That some things that we were taught were okay, good, maybe even. But, definitely culturally, I think you can't take Mormons out of their cultural.
No, it's too woven in every fiber for sure. So, but you weren't necessarily treated badly. People were just like, how can you belong to that weird cult?
That weird group.
So, but through that, what a wonderful resource. Through that association, then you were able to have, and you gave birth to both your children.
Yeah. So in 1996, I gave birth to our daughter. She'll be 27 in May. Wow. And she has her own story. And then in 1999, I gave birth to our son. And then our daughter, I always have to do the math. So she was 5 in 2001, and she started kindergarten. And that year, Terry did the second parent adoption, and she adopted both of them so that she would have all the legal rights to them as their second parent, which it cost a lot of money. Because at the time that if we were a straight couple and she was doing a second parent adoption, like the father had abandoned them and she were the man I had married, it would have been like $800. Yeah. But because of how it was, we had to hire a lawyer, we had to have a social worker, we had to have home visits, we had to do all this, and it was $5,000. So yeah, it was a lot of money.
But you were married, right?
No, not at that point, not in 2000.
Oh, not okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I see. Okay, so you're just two people trying to adopt these children. Okay.
So then they have their birth certificates now that then had us both listed. Their original birth certificate had my name as mother, and under father it had I can't remember how I put it. Refused to state. It wasn't like unknown or it was something that was different, that was like not like unknown because we kind of knew the donor, but it wasn't donor either. So I don't remember what we put. So they have an original and now they have and then they have their other ones now that have Terry as their, I think it just says crossed off and it has parent and then it has her name on it.
I see.
Okay. Interesting. Who knew? 5,000.
5,000.
Oh.
Put on a birth certificate.
But
I had to go to court and everything with the judge, and they got little teddy bears, and it was pretty cool. With our lawyer.
So you're there with that's amazing. Yeah. But what I think is even more amazing is that in 1996, you are having this baby blessed in the LDS church. Mm-hmm. So please talk to us about that mind control issue
I don't even know what we were thinking. But for both of us, it was super. See, we're still in.
It's
okay,
automatic.
We're still in.
It's just automatic.
It's an
like,
automatic thing, right? It's important you give this baby a blessing and a name in case something happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's you can't get away, but we put our twist on it. So now you have to understand on the blessing certificate, there's not going to be a father's name because there's no father. They're just me. And when we do the blessing circle, we don't care who's in it. We've got uncles in it that haven't, don't really honor their priesthood, but they have it. We've got gay uncles in it because our gay friends from Affirmation came. We got grandpa and grandpa in our circle. We would have had women in the circle if we thought we could have gotten away with it in 1996. So this circle was huge.
Now, does the bishop know, or did you just have to say, "Oh no, we've invited"?
We just said anybody that has been invited join the circle.
And the bishop wasn't like making the connection. It's like, I invited this guy. I met him at Denny's yesterday, but it's because we're so used to the rote activity. They just assumed.
Yeah.
Right.
So all of our friends that came from California and came for the blessing, and the same with our sons in 1999, same thing. They just, anybody that felt like they could be involved, it was up to them. We would invite them. And if they felt like they wanted to, they went up and stood in the circle with my dad and Terry's dad as they blessed the baby. So.
Okay. So both your fathers were the actual priesthood people that gave the blessing. And this was the ward that this wasn't even the ward you were attending. How did you get that?
It was Grandma and Grandpa's ward.
Okay. And so they were like, how come you don't want to bless in the ward you're attending? They didn't question that.
Yeah, because it's a grandparent's ward. You do that all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the kids' names
I grew up in, right? So we did it. So it's my child, my ward I grew up in, and my parents' ward. So we're good to go.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. So were you even attending at the time anywhere?
Not really. No.
Okay.
But now our daughter gets older.
Oh,
She gets to be about 8. And she says, I think I want to be baptized.
Daddy? Oh.
No, they know. They're clear on this. No, they know they're donors.
There's no dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no dad. They're very clear, both of them, on that. We've never that's never been a point. They know they're donor babies. They're good. One's got one donor, one's got another donor, but they're both mine. So we're all clear on that. So they're really good on that. They're both very proud of that, and they're really good at that. So, but she does get a little bit older now, and she starts thinking maybe she wants to be baptized.
Because occasionally, what is her affiliation with the church that even gives her that?
Cousin, grandma and grandpa.
Okay, those darn family. Okay,
you got it. Family.
Yeah. And she's like, maybe I do want to do this weird baptism thing that they're talking about that I should do.
So we say, well, if you want to do this weird baptism thing that they're talking about, we all have to go back to church.
Oh.
So guess who starts?
For how long?
It was a long time. That's all I remember.
So you went back to church for her. You showed up at the door. Your family were here. And the kids are in primary, and you guys are sitting in Relief Society. Every Sunday?
Every Sunday. Jared said, do we have to go to the long meeting again?
And so she's baptized in 4. She's baptized in 2004. And you're like, we're going to do this for the kids. We're going back. He's going to be, and was your son baptized as well then? Because you're in the, no. Okay.
Nope, because he's younger than her.
Okay. So he's enough younger.
Okay. So now we're going along. We're cruising. We've been going to church. We've not been going as much, but we still go to church. And our bishop is very good, very good. Our bishop is very open. He knows who we are. He lists us family on the ward directory. It's all very good. I'm sure there were many. And remember, we're teaching because we both taught at the same high school, and we teach in the ward that we attend. So many of the kids. Spanish. So we both teach Spanish, and we both teach the high school. And the high school is where we the high school is in the ward where we attend. So our students are in our ward. Our students, so we're mixing and mingling. So this is like, this is no big secret. We're out there. So 2008 rolls around. Lovely year, 2008. Yeah. Jared is he's 8, gonna be 9. And he's and now he's thinking about being baptized. Okay, maybe we're gonna be baptized. But 2008, yes, sharp intake to breath. This is Proposition 8. Not a pretty year here in Southern California. Not a pretty year anywhere in California as far as the church goes. This was really a deal breaker for me. I mean, we'd been through the proclamation of the family. We'd been through the Terry and I had been through the September 6th, where they, if you're feminist, intellectual, or homosexual, you're in the church, that whole thing. So now we're back to, and we here we are, family, and the proclamation of the family is all over everywhere we go, but now we're Prop 8, and you can't understand how bad it was unless you lived here.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it. I mean, I'm up in Oregon, and I'm in this little bubble. I remember hearing that Tom Hanks hates Mormons, and I was like, Toy Story, Tom Hanks? Why would he hate Mormons? We're such nice people. It wasn't until 3 years ago when I read Greg Prince's book, Mormonism and the Gays, and I found out about Prop 8. That's how just bubble living your life. It doesn't affect me, therefore I don't know anything about it. Amazing.
And where we live, when we moved here in 1990, everybody's all, why are you coming to Southern California from Utah? And we're like, we're just moving to Little Utah. Where we live is very, very LDS, super LDS. And so we're like, it's not a whole lot different than living in Utah. So it was war. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Kids would come in because Terry and I were also the co-advisors for the Gay Straight Alliance at the high school. And that was ugly. We had kids that were like, you couldn't supposed to discuss that in school, right? But we had, at this point, friends' kids were in our classroom, and in fact, one student that was mine, her parents we knew. She was also a donor baby, and she had 2 moms, and it was ugly. It was just ugly. And people were out on the streets protesting, and the wards would sign up for times to be out on street corners. Certain street corners, they would be assigned street corners to go out and be with their little signs out there. Yeah. And people,
the church really pushed that.
Yep. And they were donating money right and left. And Terry's grandmother was phone banking right and left. And it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. There was one time we were on one of the major intersections, and the police had to be called because they thought there was going to be a major brawl in the middle of the intersection. I mean, it was emotionally draining.
Did you actually have, like, because it was a kind of an LDS community, did you have, like, if let's say you're in the grocery store with your family, people come up to you and say things, or actual physical approaches, or did people in church start to kind of separate the Red Sea's parting and type thing?
Let me tell you a story. So Cassandra takes dance on Saturday mornings, and I'm taking her to dance on Saturday morning, and we drive by a very big intersection, and there's our ward out on the corner protesting, and she goes, "Mom, turn around." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "I'm going to go back and talk to them." And I said, and she's like a 7th grader, right? What are you going to say?
So brave.
Yeah.
Wonder where she gets that.
What are you going to say, Cassandra? Mom, I can't believe, I'm going to go back and talk to him. I'm like, "Are you sure?" "Yes, Mom. So I know we're going to be late to dance, but what am I going to do?" So I turn around, I take her back, I park in the parking lot. She gets out of the car. She goes up to the group. And it's not just the ward, but the stake president's in our ward. So he's there too. She goes up to him, and I'm standing back. This is not I'm not going to have this battle. This is hers, right? She walks up. Why are you doing this? They're all like, what? Why are you out here on this corner? You're so nice to my family when we're in church, and you say you love us, but now you're out here doing this to us. How can you do this to us? I mean, that is what she said. Yeah.
Wow.
Why are you doing this? Well, we're just doing.
They did not know what to do.
No, they said we're just doing what the prophet tells us to do.
See?
She's like, well, how can you do that when you know us? This just isn't right. And as they came over to talk to me, and I said, don't talk to me. She's the one you need to talk to.
Yeah.
She's the one that wanted to ask you why you're here. And it was, I mean, that was the beginning of her deconstruction.
Yeah. Did you get the rhetoric? Well, we love you. We love you, Jacki. But we just have to follow what the Lord wants us to do. Did you get any of that?
Got that the night the thing passed.
Oh.
So, and then Jared, who's like 8, turning 9, he writes a letter to the bishop. He says, Bishop, I don't want to be a part of your church. I'm never going to get baptized. 8-year-old writes a letter to the bishop. So then the night that the night the thing passed, our bishop, who I said very supporting, very nice guy, he's the stake president now. He comes to the door with cookies and flowers, and I'm not letting him in. I said, no, Bishop, this is not a good time. He goes, I know you're hurting. He said, I know you're hurting, and I know this is horrible, but I have to tell you that I'm sure that this is going to, get fixed. And I said, I'm like, no, Bishop, I just can't even talk to you right now.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
so that was pretty much our Prop 8 thing, except for we did get married in that small window of opportunity. So that's when Terry and I got married.
Okay. So how much window was there? I can't remember between it's legal, it's not legal run.
May to November.
Okay.
Whoa.
So it was May 15th, because that's Cassandra's birthday, where they came out with the court came out and said, yep, it's legal. And so then everybody got married. And then November, of course, was election day, because it was November president's election, and because it was a bittersweet election night.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you now you're legally married. You're changing the kids' birth certificates. You've completely stopped going to church altogether. And then how did you hear about the 2015 policy? Mom and dad, family again?
Probably Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And your son is how old at this point?
2015. He graduated in 2017, so he's 15.
And he was like, you're not actually in the church, you're not really participating, but when he heard that, he was like, I have now crossed over into
I'm done land.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he had so he's in high school. His sister, believe it or not, this young lady that took on the stake president and the ward, she decided she wanted to do 4 years of seminary. She graduated 4 years of seminary.
Girlfriend.
Her whole thing was she was going to sit there in that class and remind them that her family and her existed. She wasn't going to let them get away with thinking that we weren't around. So, yeah. So that was why. So she graduated from high school in 2014 with 4 years.
Let me see if I can. Okay. So this is your wedding.
Yeah.
This is your wedding in 2008. And then this is, I wanted to talk just a brief amount of time. While you guys were teaching at the school, you had a mass shooting.
Yeah, in 2019.
In 2019. And I was going to mention that real quick. I don't know if we have time to go back, but there's those kids. There's those amazing kids right there.
Yeah.
There's that daughter. And this was at Super Bowl. This is at a Super Bowl.
This is the Rose Bowl. The Rose
Bowl.
Yeah, for the University of Utah and that other team that beat us, and we don't want to talk about it.
No, there's no sense in that. So yeah, this was were you teaching when there was the mass shooting at the school?
Yes, I was there that morning. Both
You
my wife and I
were.
were there.
So just for just a second, mention, and your kids were there?
No, they had both
were-
graduated.
They had both graduated. Okay. So were you in lockdown?
Yeah, we were in lockdown. The building, yes, it was lockdown. This is not a drill. So
Okay.
it was right before school started that morning. Then they evacuated our building and made us walk to the park. I lose parts of this morning. Still.
Right.
My wife had one of her students was shot and survived, and that student actually ran to my wife's room. So because that student needed to be triaged, that's why they evacuated our building while it was still a hot zone. They didn't know where the shooter was at that point. And I remember as we were walking out, I had my backpack on walking, and I remember thinking, and I was the last one in line as I was shepherding kids down, and I remember thinking, I hope I don't get shot in the back.
Oh my gosh. Isn't it sad that it has gotten to be, when you mentioned the school shooting, I was like, which one was that? I mean, think which one was that? And then to have actually experienced it. Well, I'm telling you, Terry, you guys, I want to bring up the fact that that you guys were honored to receive the Mortensen Award for Outstanding Service to Affirmation. I really feel as though, what would you say you're doing now? You have absolutely no affiliation with the LDS Church. Did you actually resign your membership?
No, I haven't. And we were both disfellowshipped after the exclusion policy in 2015.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was just like one of the things to do. Oh, exclusion policy. Let's go through our ward list. Oh, get rid of them, get rid of them, get rid of them.
This one.
Did they
and that was on Valentine's Day of 2016. So
no, and the purpose of that, because I thought the exclusion policy was children could not be baptized. It didn't say, was there like, and also people who are living, okay, because you were married and living together. Therefore, we have to go through this list. And then they sent you a letter. Did they just say, please appear on Valentine's Day at 9:30 for your hearing, or whatever they call a disfellowship thing?
Yeah. And I decided that we would have a party instead.
Oh, excellent.
Well, I like that.
I love that idea.
So
and Terry, was she also disfellowshipped?
Yeah. So same day, just earlier hearing than mine. So we had a party at our friend's house where our friend he's had his name removed from the rolls, but his husband is a never mow. And so we used their backyard with the pool and everything. And we had a big party going on. And lo and behold, as this big party is going on, the missionaries show up at the front door.
Oh, come on. Could it be more ironic?
To injury.
Would you like to know more about the Mormon Church? Oh my God.
I mean,
we would. Yeah.
So funny, right?
So now
our friend is like this. He invites, elders, come on in, and he's like,
we're having a party back here.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Poor
so
babies.
Funny.
So you did not attend.
I did not go to my hearing. My wife went with our friend. She went to hers. I didn't go.
And it was
I wrote a letter. I didn't go.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm not going.
And did they just say you have to disavow your marriage and live independently and we'll keep you? Was that
they didn't tell us anything. They just said this is the decision. For our son, for him to be baptized, at that time he would have to have turned 18, moved out of the house, and disavowed us as his parents. And then he could have been baptized.
Yeah, because that's really good for family relations.
Yeah,
to do
that's
that.
really good for family, right?
Yeah.
And that's when he said, this isn't happening.
Yeah, it's not like there hasn't been enough trauma already.
Exactly.
So what would you say, Jacki, now? Your kids are, like you said, your kids are in their 20s. They're kind of forming their own adult life. You and your wife, you've retired, but your wife is continually teaching. You're still active in the gay community. Yes. Tell us what you're doing now.
So now right now I'm looking at, this is one thing that my therapist told me. I was talking to her after I came back from Thrive, and she's like, she knows, there's a lot of post-Mormons in this community. She goes, you really need to start a group.
Oh, that's so great.
And I'm like, yeah. So I would
I can
actually,
support
that's what I would like to do now. I'd like to
Okay.
get started in that. I just kind of I want to speak out again more. You get pulled out and you get pulled back in. And I
Right.
got pulled back in when I went to my reunion in July, and I realized that this cult thing, just especially if you're going back and forth to Utah, which I do to go visit my mother,
Oh,
pulls you back in. You just
yeah.
can't escape it. And when my mother-in-law passed away in October, it was a lot of pull you back in again. And so there's a lot of it that you can't get away from as long as family's in it, right?
Right.
So that's a lot of why people tell us, well, just get out of it, then just leave and don't come back in. But it's not that easy when
No, it
family's involved.
isn't. Exactly. So that's what you're doing right now. I know that you said that you've started a meetup and
Yeah.
a Google meetup, and that's the secret right there. And you're also involved though in legislation, because I know when I talked to you, you were in the process of doing something very very commendable, and I was not. And I was like, well, that's the difference between you and me. So you are working in Sacramento and lobbying legislatures. And what are you exactly going for?
Well, that was just the one day we were up there. I'm actually involved with the group Moms Demand Action for common sense gun laws. And it
Oh,
just barely started getting, it's not just moms, it's anybody that wants to join. But I just started getting involved in that because I realized that my story and my voice as a survivor of gun violence hadn't been heard often.
exactly.
And my story kind of gets lost with my wife's because hers is so much more interesting than mine.
Right.
So I decided I needed a place to tell my story. And
Yeah.
I decided I would start working with Moms Demand Action. And
Excellent.
I like it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, as usual, you're involved, you're resilient, and I just love your can do, and the it doesn't defeat you. I mean, you don't have a defeatist attitude, and I think that's what I saw in at Thrive, was this person that was like, "Oh, really? Now let me show you what's going to happen."
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way things get changed, and that's the only way there's movement made. And I just appreciated you standing up and saying, let me tell you about where I'm at and what you've gone through. You've got two beautiful children that have had to live through some trauma that wasn't necessary. And I just think that's amazing that they are as strong as they are because of the parents that they have.
Thank you.
So I just appreciate it so much. So Lila, thank you so much for joining us today. Lila was there, and I think that we both agreed that it was one of the better Thrive meetings that we've been to. I just felt like there was a very mature, kind feeling over this particular Thrive. I really loved it. It was great, and so that's why I invited her to be here with you.
I've never been to Thrive before. That was my first Thrive. I had been because we used to have conferences for affirmation every year.
Oh yeah.
And I totally loved those. And but this was I really enjoyed it. I made new friends, met new people like you guys.
Yeah.
And it was very much, I needed it. Yeah, I needed it.
Exactly. And it was another example of the fact that even in I'm involved in another deconstruction where it's just Christianity in general, but we do need people. As much as we think we can do stuff on our own, we can't. We do need a tribe of some kind. And when it's something as involved as religion, you have to be with other people that understand your lingo and the rituals and all of the other things. So it was a true blessing and a great weekend. Well, ladies, I don't know what your weather's like. It's really cruddy here in Houston, but whatever you're doing today, go and be with your families, go enjoy the rest of the day. I appreciate so much. And Jacki, I think we're probably going to hear from you again.
Okay.
Very much.
I hope so.
Maybe you and Terry together, right, Lila?
Maybe. We'll see if we can get her on.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I have so many more questions I would love to ask you sometime. So
let's do that. Let's do this again. That would be so great. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Okay.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thank you.
spring. Spring
You
is
too.
coming. Yes.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yay.
Bye-bye. Oh my gosh. Just another example of resilient, strong women. I love surrounding myself with strong, resilient women who go along, go along, go along. And then at some point they say, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I need to stand up and become visible and be who I really am. And I think Jacki and Lila as well are perfect examples of that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you again next week. And thank you for joining us on She Became Visible.